Hello everyone and welcome back to The Broken Quill. My name is Craig A. Woodward.
I'm James A. Moores.
Oh, I'm introducing myself. Hi, I'm Nathan Woodward.
No, you're not supposed to introduce yourself. Craig is supposed to introduce you.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm usurping
He just didn't
him.
say anything after I said my name. Craig was supposed to introduce you because that's how these things work.
Well, I am terribly sorry. This is Nathan Woodward, a studio of audio technicalities and a fine musician here to talk with us about the place of art. This will be sort of a ramble, so not like our usual style. We won't be doing many of these, but it might be fun once in a while for a less formal approach to the discussions. The place of art is a subject that we teased in the very first episode, and we finally decided to do it. During prior conversations with James, however, Nathan had some things to say about the place of art, so we thought bringing him in would allow for some interesting conversations. So, to generally start us off, the general contention at the point was that both of these two disagree with me on, is that while I overarchingly can entirely understand and even agree with the concept of quote-unquote everything is art, I find it something personally of a disservice to, for example, consider within the same likeness something like Tolkien, the Iliad, or the Divine Comedy with that of Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, or a pop song with Bohemian Rhapsody, or a child's crayon drawing to that of the Mona Lisa. I find that it can be, calling absolutely everything art, while technically true, is the equivalent of a participation trophy for those works that kind of don't really deserve that level of recognition or that title, but then again, I recognize that as gatekeeping. That's just the way that I see it. Counterpoints.
I don't know what the like politeness way of doing this is, so I didn't want to jump in at all. But yeah, no, Craig, you're wrong.
It's very simple. It's very simple. You simply sit there and you say, "Your gate is ready for your keeping, Prince Mushkin."
Okay, well, let me start off with the first point. I think that your problem in this subject is that you have a very elitist view of what art should be. The fact is
Never
that
been called elitist before.
art does not have like a level that it has to reach. You're thinking art equals, okay, it needs to be in a gallery, it needs to be viewed as this moving piece of culture, which it doesn't. Art simply means was created.
Well, I think all art is a moving piece of culture. I think that, like, even the child's drawing is a moving piece of culture.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. I meant it doesn't have to shape or shatter an illusion of culture, but everything that is art is reflective of the culture at which it was created.
That I'd agree with.
Oh, I just feel ganged up on.
And so you should.
Yeah.
Well, okay then. Well, I can certainly grasp the concept of artistic merit in the creation of the work. For example, as much as I loathe 50 Shades of Grey, there is artistic merit to the creation of the work in and of itself. If certainly, as far as I can see, and as far as my personal opinion is, most certainly not in the work's result.
Well, James, I don't know whether you wanted to say anything of this, but I would say that the 50 Shades of Grey, you don't even need to look into the actual content of it to see the art and the culture of which it represents. You only need to look at the fervour that happened around that series of novels when they first came out to see the artistic merit of it. No, it might not be a very good or helpful piece of fiction is the way I'm going to say that, but the fact that en masse people flooded to this thing, if only to see what the furore was about this thing, there is clearly some form of artistic merit there.
I get this feeling that a lot of people want to do what you're doing, Craig, which is to try to assign a numerical value to art, to say that, well, this is clearly better than this. And so there's a desire to categorize basically everything. We do this as the thing, as humans. We want to make top 10 lists. We want to decide what's better, what's the best, and we want to avoid basically what we consider to be the worst. So there's a desire to place upon art these sort of restrictions. The idea that the Mona Lisa is better art. But this, of course, is something which is interesting because it changes this numerical value of what is art and what is not art. One of the great stories is, in fact, the Mona Lisa, which majority of people considered to be trash. When it was first in the museums and that, it was just hung in a normal part. It's just, who cares? It's the Mona Lisa. And then it got stolen. And then everyone cared. And then it was a big deal. And now it's considered one of the greatest paintings ever made. So these sort of ideas of high art, low art, what is art? Can you sign a toilet and put it in the Louvre? Can you take your spray paint artwork of a girl holding a balloon and shred it and say, aha, I have destroyed my art, and then have somebody else run in and say, no, you have made it more art. So there's this grand desire to have it as a competition because we're humans. We compete. So that's, I think, where a lot of that sort of desire comes from. But I think you're right, Nate, that art is really about culture. It's about the movement and the presentation of our cultures. And the child's drawing, 50 Shades of Grey, these things are part of the culture. They're part of what makes us us. And suggesting that because a lot of people bought it, it has worth now, I think isn't really something that is about art. It's more about whether or not something has that numerical value attached to it.
While I can completely understand and even agree with pretty much every single one of those sentiments, there is a growing issue because while maybe the original sensibilities does come from a concept of, as you stated, the desire to apply a numerical value, my personal thought process in terms of motivation is much more about the sustainability of art as a concept. If we're to put it in an easily digestible manner, it's syndrome from the Incredibles movie, the Disney Pixar Incredibles movie. If everyone's special, no one will be. If everything is art, nothing is art. So where is the line drawn between that which can be looked at inside that manner versus that which is just someone scribbling, and should the line be there at all? But if the line is never there, if categories are never there, then you can apply it to literally anything. What is comedy? Literally anything that is ever found funny. This is a horror movie. It is never meant to be funny, but apparently this one single person out of all of the billions of people in the world finds it funny, so therefore it is a comedy. Does all categorization for the ease of understanding and digestion of any and all media simply then become immediately denoted to, rather than an objective tag that you can use to be able to sort which media you do and do not want to consume? Or is it all nothing but a subjective terminology based on your own personal whims? Oh, this says it's horror, this says it's thriller, this says it's suspense, and I hate horror, thriller, and suspense, but I'm going to watch it anyway because it might actually be a comedy for me. Where is the line? And if all lines get diminished, then what the point are tags and categories in the first place? You turn something which helps people and helps avoid trigger systems, that actually legitimately helps people in a lot of areas, into a nothing. And it starts with art. So if everything is art, then art doesn't exist and nothing is art, and every single thing in the Louvre should be immediately devalued.
Well, you're
Oh no, I completely agree. Oh, sorry.
well. Like let me say it. That you can go ahead, Nate. But
Okay.
just to like formalize this, I think you're jumping over everything. So
Yeah.
like in that sort of statement, you sort of included the idea that art should have a dollar value. You included the categorization. You sort of like included the idea that if it's like Syndrome from the Pixar movies, the idea that that art is somehow inherently special. And as far as sustainability, which is something you touched on there in the beginning, art is the single most sustainable thing in human history. We have been doing the art since we were cavemen spray painting our hands in caves. We have been doing art, and we will always do art. You literally cannot stop the art. Art is unstoppable. So, the sort of suggestion that what are categories for? Categories are simply to allow you, the reader or viewer or whatever, to figure out whether or not something meets your interests. Nothing less, nothing more. Science fiction, well, I like ships and spacemen and laser guns, so I want to read things like that. So if you put a category on something that says, it's science fiction, then there you go. There it is. I can find other things for it. If you're like, I like stories of detectives, then it's mystery. If you want to be scared or horrified, or if you want to find something funny, it doesn't matter if it crosses genres. The idea of a scary comedy, it's a horror, but it's also funny. If I'm looking for something funny and this is a comedy, it doesn't matter if it's also scary. But if I like comedy, but it's also horrific and I don't like horror, then I can avoid it. So the things are apples and oranges. Categories are for a different purpose than saying the word art.
I suppose I see art as simply another category.
Whereas it shouldn't be. Art is, in of itself, a thing. I mean, saying that, oh, some things are art and something isn't art is like saying, oh, this cheese is cheese, but this cheese is absolutely not cheese.
Can't believe it's not butter.
I can't believe it's not cheese. But to answer your earlier question, no, art isn't real. There is no physical thing we can look at and say, yes, this is art. This has the DNA of art. No, art is just something that was simply created. Whether or not that person had the intention to create, quote-unquote, art, or whether they were just trying to con someone out of money. Because let me ask you a question. If someone were to spend their entire life studying underneath the greatest painting masters, and there was another man who was just wanting to con someone out of money, and both of these artists just took a paintbrush and created a few random squiggles with black ink on a white canvas. They were identical, but one person spent their entire life studying and looked at this as contemporary art. The other person was simply trying to con foolish people who were trying to make bank as if this were some form of extremely good contemporary art. They were both the exact same picture. Would they have the same value? Would they have the same artistic value? Is that what you're trying to get across?
I'm going to be entirely honest, I actually don't know the answer to that. That was actually a really good analogy. I suppose I don't know, but I still feel that I don't know. Then, if there's absolutely no lines, if there's absolutely nothing at all, then where does veneration come from? Why do we aspire to others versus not to others? Why do fantasy writers aspire to Tolkien and not Rowling? Why?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll keep my mouth shut.
well, yeah. I don't necessarily want to go there. But here's the thing. Like, if you want to talk about what inspires us or what interests us as a culture, there's literally no way of like quantifying that. Very few people these days tend to read the oeuvre of Shakespeare, but you can just check by the dollar amounts how many people loved Endgame. To suggest that Endgame is not impactful, and it has the same exact level of quality as Shakespeare is not going to be accurate. But the impact? Oh yeah, that's huge impact by the Marvel films.
Then what do we call that, though? That's actually what I'm trying to get at, that I'm bad at articulating. I consider art to be something that has the actual impact. If something isn't having any level of impact to personal or societal or cultural or anything like that, then where is the justification in calling it art if it makes nobody feel anything, if it isn't about anything? Because to me, as you know, as I've said in previous videos, art is art if it says something, whether it be by intention or design or by accident. If it says something more than the sum of its parts, that to me is art. No matter whether it says it badly or good, something doesn't have to be of great quality to be art. It just has to be saying something more than what it is.
Generally, I'd say pretty much everything that we've gone through and everything that you've said should not count as art does say something. I mean, if you take a look at 50 Shades of Grey, granted, it doesn't have very positive messages, but what does that say about the author and what were her intentions? She was just kind of horny. She wanted to get some, and that was her message with that.
New Historicist, Death of the Author, her personal intentions don't matter. New Critical, however, the actual work that's in there, the book itself, the contents of the book, voice, story, character, everything, means nothing.
If you want to play in hang on, let me take this, Nate. If you want to play in my Battlefield, then you gotta remember that as far as a New Critical response goes of anything, good luck finding a story or piece of art that doesn't say anything.
Yes, because
everything has a message.
Yes, I mean, and you can say Death of the Author. We don't know that the author was horny trying to write 50 Shades of Grey. No. You know. She wrote that because she wanted some. Her intention was to create fairly softcore porn, and that's pretty much where that ended. Sure, she can say, I was trying to say certain things about manipulation and male power structure. No. She wanted some.
But even wanting some is a message. Dear God, the number of books written about being horny. Oh yeah, that's a lot.
Now, I can certainly understand that the concept of everything having some level of meaning and otherwise, but is there... I know I've reiterated this twice already, but really, is there absolutely no lines? Where does the categorization come in? How does something pass the mark in terms of being able to be considered something worth venerating? Because if there is things that are considered great and impactful versus things that are just considered shit and not, and all of it is considered art, then where's the scale?
Can I take this for a second, James? Is that okay?
Yes,
okay.
You go ahead.
Sorry, speaking as someone whose main field of interest at the moment is music, this is a good question of where does the line draw for art? Because I'm sure if anyone's turned on the radio and listened to the latest pop song, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of art in there. Typically, when you've got a top 40 hit, it's not written by the person singing it. The person singing it has several effects changing their voice so they can actually sound half decent. They didn't play a single instrument. They didn't compose a single piece of music. They just turned up to the studio, recorded for half an hour, and then got on their car. So can that be considered art? And yes, actually, it can be, because in music, there is a certain... I suppose you can say there are certain rules that you have to follow by. You have to pick a time signature, and you have to stick to that time signature. You have to pick a key, and yes, you can change keys, but whilst you are in a section that requires that key, generally you want to stay within that key. Now, there is such a thing as... There have been people who have created music that deliberately tries to step outside these boundaries, deliberately tries to sound awful by breaking those rules, and yet... that is still considered art. So if everything can stay within the rules, and everything can break the rules, but both can be considered art, then no, are no lines, there are no borders that determines what is and what isn't art. Art is created so that it may be consumed, not necessarily earn some dollars, but just it's put out there for someone to witness. If a little girl scribbles a drawing and then hands it to her mother, that's who the audience is. They're not intending for that to go into the Louvre, they're not intending for that to be broadcast on television, they just want to make their mother feel happy.
Well, you bring a great point there, Nate, and like just talking about music for just a quick second. There's a piece, you probably know it better than I do. It's a very famous piece called like 3:16 or something, 3 minutes 16 seconds.
Yes.
And the beginning, the beginning of it is just like this like cacophony of everyone plays one note and then it's silent. There's no more notes on the page. And like the intention of it is for everyone to sit there and think about something, or like to how they feel about it or how it is. And it's considered a great piece of music, and it has one note. The intention or the way people consume it or something is that art. Definitely, people consider that art. If you presented a blank canvas and put it in the Louvre, people went and thought it was great art. Yeah, it's art. I mean, you've had several times over the years a lot of these artists trying to challenge the art world, quote unquote. The idea of, I'm going to sign this urinal and call it fountain and put it in the Louvre, and it's a way of making fun of art. And then everyone's like, oh my god, it's art. And then Banksy with his destroyed painting, he's like, no, I'm going to thumb my nose at the art world by destroying the painting. And then it's like, uh-oh, now people think it's more art. Now people like it more that you destroyed it. And so, yeah, there's no bounds. There's nothing. It's about what we as a culture or we as a people say or feel about it, and it changes all the time.
I suppose my biggest issue is the concept of the consumerism within art. For example, a great carpenter can just make a chair, and that chair can be considered a work of art. Time, effort, skill, labor went into it. But by the very concept of creation being considered art, if a person threw in a computer-generated CAD design of a boring-ass chair and had it cut out via a computer and then just sat on it, by those very definitions, that is considered as much art and worth just as much as the carpenter who labored on the work. And I don't like the concept of mass consumerism and mass production. Or a local bottle of alcohol, the glasswork of it, the packaging of the foil packaging, not the design of it, the marketing design of it, but the actual foil design of it, the shape of it, of a chocolate bar, the corporate music in the music industry, music and lines and everything which are by marketing specifically designed as a standard. I work in marketing. I have seen the levels that they go to, the way that they analyze the field, and very specifically pick the individual aspects that are designed for one singular factor to be as addictive as possible and as consumerism as possible, without any care, without any concern for any level of actual quality, depth, or giving a crap. And I look at this endless sea of crap, and it is difficult for me to look at that and consider that in any way even appropriate, even without it possibly being insulting, to call it art. I do not consider myself art in my writing, as I've said hundreds of times through multiple videos about my own writing. My book that I am writing, I know, but my book, there is artistic merit in the ability to write. I recognize an artistic ability in my ability to write and my prose and things of the like. But in terms of my storyline, what I'm trying to say with it, nothing. I've got nothing to say with my work. If someone can find something that is said within it, I will be greatly surprised and I will be greatly happy for that. But in general, I don't consider myself art. You, James, I consider your work art. You are an amazing writer, and you are incapable of writing anything that doesn't have so many layers of meaning that you yourself discover as you write it and as we work through it together, but sometimes intentional, other times not, and they are fantastic. And my love, Nathan, you have written work and music which has both just fun, catchy themes, but also 90% of the time, if not all the time, you have some level of emotive depth to what it is you're trying to say that is very moving and powerful, whether it be about love, society, yourself, your inner feelings, everything. And it is powerful and wonderful. It's why I love listening to you play. I don't consider the marketing manufactured crap to be even close. Whether it be the latest pop song that's as popular as ever and venerated and everybody loves it, if it is created by a marketing team, I consider it worse than your songs. Nay, I consider a book or something written I don't know of any books which have been written by marketing teams just to be sold. Usually I'm assuming they're self-help books personally, but I haven't read them, so maybe I'm wrong there, but I just look at them and just go, they're probably, but that's just me. But I don't consider market consumerism able to be looked at, market mass consumerism able to be looked at as art, because I just can't consider that in any way other than insulting to those like yourselves that do great work. But maybe that's an unfortunate level of quote-unquote cancel culture. I'm offended on behalf of you while neither of you care. So...
let me just start by saying I do feel like you are conflating art with quality. I do believe that is a big pitfall that you're having right now. Just because something is good doesn't mean it's art, and just because something is bad, that doesn't mean it's not art.
As I said, there are great pop songs that are considered great that even I've liked that are market consumerism, but they're empty still.
Yeah, but that's not part of the point you were making. A part of the point you were making was that you were saying that this is crap, and it shouldn't be considered art. And I highly disagree with that, because the way that we perceive our art is all completely personal. It's not an objective look at it. You can't be objective and look at art. But continuing on with what you were saying about market-made music, yes, I can agree that there is a certain level to pop music where it is basically scientifically constructed to have a certain effect. But I would go so far as to even say that it should still be considered art, because there is an idea in the creation that it is going to have an effect on its audience. The effect can be simply to become addictive to listen to. It can have a catchy hook. It can have a good beat that people can dance to. It can play in the clubs. That is still an intentional effect created and inserted into the music. It may be scientific, it may be soulless, but that's still an artistic approach.
Well, I feel like there's a bit of... I want to push back against this a little bit, because I would argue that as artists, we are all marketers.
In a sense, yes.
It's very hard. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Follow along with me for just a second.
Exactly.
When you're writing a song, do you not want people to enjoy it? Maybe you want to get the message. Maybe you want them to learn something, or maybe you want them to feel something. In that way, you are mechanically choosing notes, you're mechanically choosing words that get across your point the best. You want people to enjoy your story. You're selecting words, you're selecting phrases, characters, ideas, colors, if you're like a painter, notes if you're a musician, words if you're a writer, specifically designed to evoke emotion, to evoke feeling, to evoke anything. And if you're a marketer talking about a Pepsi commercial, you want to invoke a desire for the brand, to buy the brand. Or in the case of pop songs, you are mechanically saying, well, this thing is in right now, so I want to do a song that hits those notes, that hits that style. And yeah, there's a level of mechanization there, but you, as the marketer, are still designing it. You're still saying, well, we need to hit this note, we need to hit this note, and we need to hit this note. And there's very little difference between what you as a person doing that naturally and somebody doing that with a computer. So in many ways, I feel like they're really the same thing, just one's mechanical and one's more natural.
To continue on with that, yes, and because there is basically a very simple scientific approach or mathematical approach that can be put towards pretty much any form of art. Like I was saying with music, there are such things as keys, and keys establish what notes sound nicest together, and these things can be used both by, to use basically your approach, Craig, artists and marketers. Because those are the rules in which that art needs to be created, and go with like a painter, there is such a thing as colour theory. There are colours that look nice together, and there are colours that don't look nice together, and there are colours that when put together create its own form of mood. So yes, an artist can use like red and blue to evoke sadness and anger within their own piece of art that's being hung up in some gallery, or Pepsi can use it because they know that the color blue makes people in the shop stop and think about their purchase, and they'll think, yeah, I want Pepsi because I have no control of my life. Pepsi's fine, by the way.
I have no argument against any of these, and I hate that I don't have an argument against them. Yes, congratulations, you guys get to pat yourselves on the back. I think that a lot of this comes towards anger in terms of the marketing field and consumerism in general. When I speak of quality, it isn't about the quality of the work. A computer-made item can be so meticulously and well put together that it could last significantly longer than any human could put together by hand. Computers being an example, while the very first ones were soldered by hand, now they are significantly better and significantly... You couldn't create, for example, it is physically impossible to create a current microchip by hand. You can't, in terms of the kind of microchip that's currently inside your computers. They are too small. The prongs are like nanometers apart. You wouldn't be able to do it. There's no steadier hand on the world that would actually be able to perform that. It has to be done by computers, and there is a level of artistic understanding and creation in the coding, in the design, in the placement, in getting things just scientifically right so that you avoid things like jumping electrons and things of the like. But I think that the level of... I think that consumerism in general makes me... When I think of quality, I'm talking about the soul of something. When something is soulless, I feel like that is when it cannot be considered art. In my own mind, possibly subjectively so, if we're saying that art is subjective, which I do agree on it being. It's just subjectively so, I can't consider something that is soulless to be also artistic. Well, that's just my own personal way that I can look at it. Even something... The design of the microchip isn't soulless. Somebody laboured over it. Somebody laboured over the science. They worked really hard. They managed to get it just right. Most corporations that are making music are just copying formulas. They're not actually researching new ways of doing shit, which is why every pop song sounds the same and uses the same 4 chords and everything like that. Although I have heard some amazing, incredibly deep songs that also use the same 4 chords. So there's that. But I don't know. I just feel like soullessness equals a lack of art, and calling it art is like a participation trophy. But that is a personal, subjective stance I would possibly agree to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would like to respond to that with a quick question, though.
Okay.
What do you consider to be the soul of art? Is it the artist's intention? Is it the message that they're trying to perceive to their audience?
Everything that is created by a person, whether that be by hand or by their intellect or by their mind or by their efforts, something which is the fruit of their labors, whether it be using a tool or otherwise, contains a piece of that person. It always does. Tolkien is famed for basically of claiming that the Lord of the Rings has no allegory, no nothing. It's just an adventure story he told his kids. As far as he was concerned, there was no depth. Yet there are entire university courses dedicated to its study and its impact and how and what makes it good, its allegory and everything like that, because it is impossible to not see the allegory within it, because whether he intended it to have allegory or otherwise, it did. His soul was bled onto the page. He opened up his typewriter and he bled onto the page. That is how it goes for writers. And I feel like when you put something in that you're passionate about, if you are passionate about the work, that is where your passion becomes its soul, whether that be through the creation by use of a computer or otherwise. But if another company is using the formula of something else, that's not a passion for the formula, that's not a passion for the art, that's a passion for the capitalism, and the only thing that they care about is getting it out as fast as possible so they can rake in the money. They don't actually care about the quality of the work, they don't even care about the work, they don't care about how it sounds, they care about if it's effective, nothing more, nothing less. They care about whether the program is running right, and the program will dictate what good songs are good. There's plenty of music out there which is sang by people with artistic voices because they are passionate about their voice, but the music itself literally was created not just by a computer but by a single click of auto-generated music. That is a thing in the pop culture industry, to my understanding, in terms of there are plenty of songs that are auto-generated in terms of being catchy and shit like that with very few tweaks.
No,
And
I would say no.
Really? I honestly have assumed that that is a thing these days.
No, I've heard about supposed like music generating robots, but they haven't got a grasp of it yet.
The same is true about writing. Every now and then you'll see something where they're like, "Oh, look, it's a story a robot wrote.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?" And then you read it, and it's full of like nonsensical.
Yeah, you see these
bullshit.
like every month or so. Oh, we fed this robot 80 Seinfeld episodes, etc., and we made it write a new one, and it's all incomprehensible rubbish.
Fair enough then. So the same works in terms of music and all that. Yeah, okay, that's understandable. But I think you get my point. It's the level of passion that is able to be put into a work allows it to, whether it has intent or non-intent, to develop a soul of its own, and something which is, if the passion isn't in the work, if the passion is simply in the money that results from the work, then the quality of the work and the intent of the work isn't given justice, and none of that passion is put into the work.
I think you're getting
then
into
I suppose the artistic quality
dangerous-
goes into the marketing more than it does into the product.
I think you're getting into a dangerous space there. There's a certain amount of concern that what we're talking about is that idea of the starving artist, that you shouldn't be paid for your work. The idea that you see it on Instagram all the time now, things like this, where artists rile at the suggestion of free art, or the idea of exposure, or the concept that they should provide the art for free just so that people can see it and be affected by it. And there's a certain amount of this argument, the idea that Banksy is more pure because he is stenciling the side of buildings, and the Marvel directors are less pure because they are tainted by the money and the desire for it. And I'll tell you this, Shakespeare was super a money guy. He loved the money, and he wrote works that were super in the time. Like, they were like, oh yeah, no, this other guy's doing a play, I'm gonna write one like that. Oh, it's Romeo and Juliet, and it will last 1,000 years. But he was literally, in many cases, just chasing the money.
Yes, I believe it was Richard III he wrote upon commission from the royal family. I may have that story wrong and the play wrong, but I believe it was written as anti-propaganda against a former king.
It was. The King Richard III was on the other side of the War of the Roses. And so the fact is, in historical truth, Richard III was not deformed. He was not someone who people hated. They loved him. They thought he was a great king. But he was on the other side. So he had to be
He was on the
vilified.
losing side, specifically.
Well, it's always the losing side, isn't it?
History is written by the victors, as they say.
Indeed.
Well, fair enough then. I don't know if I really have anything else that I can say in terms of my point. Anything else anybody wants to say?
Not really, no. I think I made all of my points vocal.
James?
I'm pretty good.
Okay. Well, I hope it was interesting to anybody listening that or watching this, that watching me getting ganged up on. Yeah, that was fun. Let us know inside the comments your thoughts on the situation. If you found it interesting, please do let us know. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and we hope to see you next time. I'm Craig A. Woodward.
And I'm James A. Moores.
Am I doing myself this time? No, okay.
Yeah, now you do yourself.
Yeah.
I'm Nathan Woodward.
And we hope to see you next time on The Broken Quill. Goodbye.
Bye.